presentation, we'll have two speakers. So Dr. Alade is the manager of the veterinary services at the Chicken Farmers of Ontario. He's been a certified veterinarian for over 10 years of experience working in Canada and Nigeria. His work at the CFO includes the collaboration to optimize performance of Ontario broiler chicks. And we'll also have Jessica LeClair, and she works for OBHECC. She completed her degree at Guelph for wildlife biology, but switched into agriculture, the agriculture field, starting with fish, then turkeys, and now she's with hatching egg chicks. So let's give them a warm welcome.
Thanks so much, everyone, for attending this, and thanks so much for having us, guys, to do this. This is a very important industry initiative, and it's been a collaboration all of the way, and I'll be going through this with Jessica LeClair from OBHECC, as it's been previously said. Some of the things that I'll be going through today will be around this group, the Industry Chick and Flock Working Group, how that was formed, the thought behind that, and then some of the 7-day mortality reporting, and some of the further investigation that we're looking at. This just shows you, I don't expect everybody to be able to read this from the back, but it just shows you how much of collaboration has been going on between the Chicken Farmer of Ontario, that's the Chicken Working Group, and the Chick Working Group of that organization, and the industry. We've had a significant number of meetings as an industry group working with the Ontario Broiler Hatching Egg and Chicks Commission, and then meetings with industry individual hatcheries. Over 28 individual meetings in 2019 already. The OBHECC and CFO industry group, that's the Industry Chick and Flock Performance Working Group, was formalized in 2018, and one of the major reasons for that is around what's already been said so many times today. It's understanding that chick performance doesn't just stop there. It goes to affect how the flock performs. So understanding that and knowing how important that is for the industry came together in 2018, and that's some members from the Chicken Farmers of Ontario, two farmer members who are directors of the Chicken Farmers of Ontario, and then from the Ontario Broiler Hatching Egg and Chicks Commission, directors, staff, and hatchery representatives. And one of the things that we saw immediately when we started looking at some of the data was that on the average, the performance of chicks in Ontario wasn't bad. On the average, our 7-day mortality wasn't bad. But we understood that we needed to dive in a little bit more to understand what's causing some of the inconsistency that might be driving poor performance. I'll now be getting Jessica to continue.
Okay, so both organizations, like Gbenga said, kind of recognize that there's opportunities and challenges that are inherent to the industry, and the need to successfully adapt. There's a changing market and changing customer needs. Through a joint collaborative effort between our two organizations, the working group kind of developed joint goals, and they mostly centered on 7-day mortality and flock performance. We kind of developed a multi-year work plan, so we recognize that this is not going to be an easy task, and we also know that it's going to take a long time. And the Continued Improvement Initiative is founded on principles of data-based decision-making, problem definition, and goal setting. So some of the goals that we have are to achieve a reliable and consistent chick performance outcome to meet the market demand. And that's not going to be done without both of us collaborating, because really we are a continuous work stream, even though we are kind of disjointed into organizations. And then to continuously improve through analysis, data collection, and information sharing and reporting. So we recognize that we do have good chicks, but there's always room for improvement. And the last one is to improve transparency and data management regarding flock ordering, placement, and planning. Again, we're two organizations, so there is a divide in the data that OBHECC collects and data that CFO collects. So in order to accurately get the full picture, we need to understand the full picture. And in order to achieve these goals, we've identified 3 work streams that the working group will be focused on: reliable and consistent chick performance, industry collaboration, and continuous improvement. How the system currently works involves a great deal of long-term planning on the hatching egg side of the spectrum. In order to get broiler chickens to CFO, our hatcheries are going to have to order chicks like 2 years in advance. So in order to get those chicks, we need to have a reliable and consistent chick performance, and that way we can kind of streamline the whole process. And that directly involves industry collaboration. We need to be able to report and share information in order to understand where improvements need to be made. Before the working group was established, OBHECC didn't know the data, so we didn't know the 7-day mortality. And in the same vein, CFO didn't have access to a lot of data as well, like how old the flocks were that produced the chicks, like to the week and stuff like that. So we're hoping to improve that transparency. And through collaboration, we're determining what factors are really affecting the 7-day mortality and flock performance, and finding ways to gather the data and analyze it appropriately. Finally, the last work stream is, once we've discovered some of these factors and more concrete in the ideas that we have, is determining how to improve the mortality and flock performance. So that could be through like changing regulation, or maybe establishing best practices for either farmer on the hatching egg side or the CFO side. And finding strategies to really mitigate the risks involved in chick mortality.
Thank you, Jessica. Now I'm just going to walk you through some of the data types and the analysis that we've done. This is a sample of some of the things that the industry have been sharing with the hatcheries and the OBHECC staff. That's something that Jessica mentioned already. And farmer members too, chicken farmers are able to see this. So on a by-quarter period since 2017, they can see how the chick 7-day mortality has performed. So we've provided the weighted average by quarter period as a line graph. And this, so right now we've had more than 12 data points. So a farmer member can go there and benchmark themselves, because we believe that's important. Dr. Marina Brash spoke to that. How did I perform in comparison? You want to be able to have your own data. How is my barn performing? But how does that compare to the industry average? And I'm knowing that the average by itself doesn't tell the entire story. One of the things that we've done by quarter period is segregating the number of barns, because we have these data by barns and by floors. We segregated that for each quarter period into the percentage of barns and floors that's reporting in different bands. So the green bands that you're looking at is the number of barns and floors that's reporting less than 1%. And the orange band is what portion of our barns and floors are reporting between 1 and 1.5. And then gray is between 1.5 and 2, and then 2, and then the red portion is greater than 2%. Hopefully, we hope to be able to have that top portion reduced to almost nothing. That's something that we definitely would hope for, and then the green portion of those bars increasing further. And one of the things that we try to do as a group is to actually say, where do we focus interventions? And what type of performance can we say is not within normal range? So we try to define outlier performance based on the spread. And one of the things that we did was that we looked at different ways that we can define these outliers, and we settled on a statistic means of doing that. So we defined through statistics and just looking at the spread, where do we expect all the barns and floors to congregate around? And if you're looking at that, the red portion of that of this spread is where we say that based on statistics, these are outliers. And that's the tail that we are targeting. If the farms or barns that are performing around that portion is where we think that we should focus our further intervention. And this is just a graphical representation, hand-drawn representation of that. We're saying that a huge portion of the Ontario production is performing within norm, and there's very little concern with that. And at the other end is where we believe that we will be investigating further to understand what's driving some of those why that's occurring. And then another question that we want to be able to answer is this: can we reduce the number of these farms that are affected? We know we're dealing with a biological system, and that even when we do have a very good average, there will be spread on both sides of that average. But is it possible for us to intervene, and based on some of the things that we see, understanding the factors that's lending to those kind of performances, can we shift that tail from the right closer to the left? Based on the 2018 figures that we looked at, we said that the outlier points was 2.4%, and then those are the kind of any barn or floor that's above that number would be what we'll be looking at for further investigation. And for the further investigation, some of the things that we hope to be able to achieve is to, one, understand, do we see something that is consistently driving those kind of numbers? Is it based on, are we seeing particular broiler farms that are within that particular area? Are we seeing particular hatcheries that's driving those kind of numbers? Or is it a particular hatching producer that's driving those kind of numbers? So we just want to be able to understand factors, seasonality, and every other thing that might be contributing to that. And some of them we might not be able to help. Some of them we might be able to start thinking about how to better mitigate. And then hopefully we should be able to, when we completely understand what's driving the outline performance, the hope is that we will be able to mitigate, provide strategy to mitigate that. And we hope that when all those efforts are in place, that we will be able to further drive even the average. The average on I've said that already, that the average is not bad, but we hope to even drive it down even lower than what we've seen so far. And some of the further investigation that I mentioned that we hope to be able to do is to establish causal relationships. And I've said this already, but we do understand that this is a biological system, and a one-to-one relationship is sometimes very difficult to ascertain. But some of the things that we hope to be able to investigate further is the flock of origin, around what's the flock age, is that driving some of the numbers that we're seeing. We, as an industry, a portion of our chicks come from outside of Canada. Is that driving what we're seeing? And some of the eggs come from outside of here too. And those kind of numbers, comparing them to the 7-day mortality, are we seeing any kind of correlations between them? And then I mentioned this already, the chronic outline performance, is that something that we're seeing from certain farms? Is that something that's coming from certain actually producing farms or hatcheries? And then seasonality. And that's the end of these. I'll be glad to take questions if there's time for them.
Absolutely. You have a question for Dr. Late or Jessica?
Yeah.
Actually, sorry, I'll bring the mic from you.
Oh, okay. Now, just a question. So the mortality numbers, do they include morbidity or culls?
Morbidity, no. Calls, yes. So we learn the 7-day mortality is a total addition of the number of calls that farmers report and then the actual mortality that they would have picked. So it includes the calls. But for the morbidity, that's not included in that. Yeah.
So I guess, just from real quick glance looking at it, you want less mortality. You don't want more mortality. That's the goal.
Yeah.
But what if the higher mortality numbers are because the guys culled more birds because they were doing the right thing, like Lloyd Weaver would say, they cull. There's a reason you get 102% of the birds you need. How do you use that number, or how do you differentiate your numbers based on those kind of facts?
That's a very good question. And one of the things that the group said and walked through initially was that there will be certain practices that's driving certain kind of numbers. And one of them might just be a very diligent farmer that's aggressively calling. And that's some of the things that we preach to. Instead of throwing antibiotics at a flock at a young age, call as much as you can, and so that might drive those numbers. But where would it drive it to? And that's why we went with the statistic and looking at outlier based on certain numbers. Where do we think calling practice would help a normal flock, and where would we start saying that this is just a problem in that sense? And some other things would actually start showing those kind of figures too. How did the flock perform at the end of the day? So those are the kind of correlations that we'll be looking at. So it doesn't just stop at the 7-day mortality.
Got another question right here.
Yeah, thanks. What data you have, can you tease out the RWA flocks or the organic flocks in there, because they may have different spreads for mortality?
That's a very good comment. The data does not look at the organic or RWA growers, but for even the RWA raised without antibiotic, we don't really collect that data right now in that sense. But we monitor the antimicrobial use, and it's possible to correlate who used antibiotic and who did not. But sometimes it's difficult to say, did you have intention to use antibiotic, or did something occur that forced you to do that? So currently we're just looking at the 7-day mortality, and then hopefully that when we track this and looked at the trend over time, it's kind of evens things out. But we're not looking at organic or other programs differently.
Question across the room?
Gbenga, we're assuming day 0 was placed in big, correct?
Yes.
7-day mortalities you receive from who?
For farmers, from chicken farmers. From
You only receive the 7-day mortality percentage?
Yes.
Can you? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say they report their mortality and their number of calls. So separately, but we total that for those numbers.
Is it possible to get the pattern of mortality from day 0 to day 7?
That will be something I'd like to see myself, and that's part of what's been discussed, but right now we're not doing that.
But the mortality sheets, supposedly, if they do them properly, will have day 0 to day 7, their mortality in those each and every day.
Yes.
because pattern mortality is critical. Hatchery is not to blame for everything. And if you have the first 0 to 3, we can focus maybe possibly in communication with hatchery. But day 4 onwards, we need to focus on farm. So if you want to review and strategize for action plans, I think pattern mortality, if you can get the 7-day mortality as percentage, surely, if you're working with your farmers, you get the pattern of mortality.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and that's one of the areas that we believe would help us as a group. Right now, that's not what's being collected. It might become something that we do as an industry for maybe a subset of the farm that they decide to investigate or something. But right now, we're looking at the 7-day mortality. And remember, we came from a place where we didn't have this data. We collected 10-day mortality data for the longest time, and in 2017, just to be able to get to a place where we can better benchmark. We know the 7-day mortality is an international figure in that sense that we can benchmark with almost every other jurisdiction. So that this is, in that sense, it's a step that we made, and we're working together now just to get better, and definitely other things we hope will come.
On that note, I have a follow-up question. Where does Canada fit in with the rest of the world with our 7-day mortalities for 2018? Are we doing well, or are we looking at that?
I don't know if okay. I've looked at the AgriStats data for some years before now, and don't quote me on this. In 2017, our numbers were not far from US. I don't have any, some other people in the room might have other insights into other jurisdictions like Europe. I do not know that yet.
Any final questions for the pair? Okay, thank you very much.